Hey guys, welcome back to Wealthy AF Podcast. And today I have Cody McLaughlin. And Cody, with over 28 podcasts across categories, including 5 global chart toppers, 7 domestic chart toppers to his name and bylines in some of the biggest outdoor publications in the world. Cody is a sought-after expert in not only podcast production and digital marketing, but also an expert in running political campaigns, raising money for nonprofits, generating earned media attention, and is a huge advocate for life's greatest passion, the great outdoors. Cody, welcome, brother, to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Martin.
Thank you, brother. So today I want to talk to you about political correctness. We live in an era. This is an interesting topic for me because we're living in an era where you say the wrong things, you get canceled. We're seeing some things happening with our ex-president. How my opinion, how I see the current administration weaponizing the justice system to try to take down their appointment. That's my opinion. I don't know where you stand on that, but hey, man, I'm just going to say what I think here, brother. And
100%.
That weaponizing the justice system to go against their appointment. That's my opinion. It's nonsense, and some of my listeners may agree or disagree. Doesn't matter. We all have our opinion. It's what I think. Tell us your story, how you got into politics, and what is political correctness? What does that really mean?
Yeah. So, again, thanks for having me, Martin. Big fan of the show. We'll start with my story, the 30,000-foot view. So I got my start in politics. I was in my second semester of college. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I took an internship working on the Chris Christie for governor campaign in 2013. And then I did a really good job there. And politics and political campaigning is one of the last industries, in my opinion, that is a true meritocracy, in the respect that, it has always been a place where if you're a hardworking person that has some smarts to you, doesn't matter if you already have your college degree or not, or whether you have a master's degree, it's all about what results you produce. It's a very hustle culture. And so you can shoot up like a rocket. So after that campaign, I got a call from the person who was my boss on that campaign. And he asked me to move to Oregon to run some state house campaigns. And he asked me with a week's notice to drop everything, move across the country, run some campaigns for 6 or 8 months with no guarantee of a job afterwards. And that's what I did for the next 7 years or so. Just moving around the country, political consulting, running campaigns, doing comms work. Basically like PR work for campaigns, cutting advertisements. So those attack ads you see on the TV, that was me. The talking point sheets that people parrot online, that was me writing those. I was on some of the biggest fights around the country. Worked on 2 presidential campaigns, including 2016, and then 2020 as well. I've worked on over 150 different political campaigns, from all the way from presidential down to local town stuff. Really fun work. I got a little tired of it over time and found my niche in podcasting, just using some of the same skills that I had picked up there and saw a need because there just weren't that many quality, results-focused producers out there. So I started producing podcasts, mostly in the outdoor space. I've now reached across categories, done, news and politics, wilderness, kids and family. I've got a number 8 show on the Apple top charts there right now. It's been a whirlwind of a career for a kid that doesn't even have a college degree. You know what I mean? But I think it's proof that hard work really pays off. So moving to political correctness, what is it? Let's start by defining it. It is a metastasized cancer on society, for one thing. But really, if you take a step back, it's a damning evaluation of how communication has evolved in the digital age. So, I've been a digital marketer for, almost my entire career. I've, been the person that's written many of the political emails you've probably gotten in your inbox. Written and produced a lot of the political ads that you see on TV, both on the positive and the negative side. And really what we're seeing is, people can't tell the sharks from the guppies anymore because it's become so prevalent. In many cases, one of the scary things for me was my first stint at an actual PR firm. I was working in Portland. This was 2015 or so. I popping up in the region. Can't talk a lot about that, but what I can say is that a few weeks into that, I was confronted online by somebody that, word for word, spat out one of my own talking points that I wrote. You know what I mean? And
wow,
it was a really an eye opener for me because it removed the degree of separation from what I was doing right at work every day, and the impact the real impact that had on the world, right? So, and now I'm one person who was relatively junior at the time, right, in this stuff, across an industry that's billions of dollars on both sides of the aisle, right? So if you extrapolate that out, right, that's where this political correctness mindset is coming from, this cancel culture mindset. It's driven by largely bad and deceptive fundraising practices on political campaigns and the need to win primaries. So these campaigns, right, and ever since politics became cool a couple of years ago, it's gotten exponentially worse. And not just on the right. It's not going to try to blame Donald Trump. And I got to tell you that, Donald Trump, planning to vote for him myself. Not everybody in the world agrees with that, but there it is. But that aside, if you don't like how Donald Trump interacts or acts or his presence online, Donald Trump is a symptom. He's not the problem. These problems existed long before Donald Trump. And I'm telling you, as somebody who started a thriving business as an opposition researcher at one point. I was consulting for political campaigns, nonprofit organizations and such across the political spectrum, actually, digging up dirt to slander people with, well, not slander, but because all the facts that I found were true, but to attack people with, using paid media. And a lot of these campaigns spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars, sometimes even tens of millions of dollars with the large, statewide races, pursuing cancel culture to some degree. So a lot of times, they will jump on the meat of the day, right? When, and I remember doing it when they tried to cancel the Dr. Seuss books, this and that, and they made a big, on both sides of the aisle, made a big deal about it. And they're just looking for reasons to ask people for money. So they have people trolling online looking for anything that could even remotely upset someone. And then they're throwing it in your face with highly targeted digital advertising through a conversion funnel where you're getting emails, text messages, display ads, you're getting social media ads, you're seeing pre-roll video. And then using that branding effort to try to whip people up so that they will give you money, so that you will give them money to perpetuate the same thing. So that's how it works. That's where it comes from. And people used to be a lot more savvy about what was advertising, what was not. There used to be a larger societal component where people saw that, okay, well, this is just a political campaign. These are just attack ads. It may sway my opinion of that congressman for the purpose of voting in this election, but I'm not going to let it change, people, you can lose friends over your politics now, and you can be estranged from family members over your politics now. And I just think that's one of the craziest things in the world to me.
Yeah. So you said something that was quite interesting, and I want to unpack that with you. You said that Donald Trump is a symptom of the situation. Can you elaborate on that?
Donald Trump, some of the things he's most famous for, are really, they're not all that uncommon in not just political speech, but in regular speech. And that's why he's become so popular in some demographic circles, right? Is that he I know he's a billionaire, but he comes across as the regular guy, right? He cracks jokes about, he takes all these things that you're saying, not you, but the royal you, right? You, the listener, have heard yourself in a bar, I'm sure. Those same comebacks, clapbacks, whatever you want to call them, that internet culture, all he's doing is harnessing that and using it towards his public persona. And it's a smart branding move. Whatever you want to say about whether you enjoy his politics, which I would challenge that most people really don't have any idea of policy because they're so distracted by the discourse these days. Most people couldn't Donald Trump or even Joe Biden's policy has on their daily life. They're just like, this guy's bad, this guy's good, because I was told that 1,000 times, right? And this is where my circle of influence is telling me. So, anything that people have as a gripe against Donald Trump, as far as, public discourse and stuff, they have nobody to blame but themselves. This is a symptom of a larger issue where communication in our country and across the world really is breaking down because of the metastasization of the digital age. You've heard the adage, I'm sure, that it's harder to get punched online, right? So you get the keyboard warriors who are a lot more brave about saying things. I'm sure you've got plenty of critics yourself online who, write a whole sentence about how you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And he's just harnessing that in a way that nobody else really has, and at a scale nobody else really has. And it's a smart branding move. It's worked for him, clearly. He was the president of the United States for 4 years. If I was making a bet right now, I think he will be again come January 20th next year.
So let me ask you a question, because you traveled in those circles, and I suspect, and I think a lot of Americans are suspecting that, to me, it's kind of clear. I'm a thinking guy. I think I'm a really logical guy, and I like to ask questions like, I believe, let me rephrase that. I believe that intentions matter, right, Cody? We can be walking down the street, right? And you can run fast as you can to me and push me off and push me, and I fall in the ground. And I could get up from there, scraped up, and I could look at you and be pissed off, right? I'd be like, Cody, what the hell you do, man? Why you push me in the ground? And you're like, hey, dude, you didn't see that truck was coming real faster in that corner. I just saved your life. And I'm like, oh, shit, thank you, man. I really appreciate that, right? So I could be scraped up, but your intentions mattered. You saved my life, right? Could have been upset, but you saved my life. So I'm looking at what's happening with Donald Trump. I'm looking at what's happening with the situation with him right now, where I think that the current administration is weaponizing the justice system to win an election. To me, it seems clear. It seems kind of obvious. And has nothing to do, brother, with what side of the aisle you're on. I heard you say you were you worked on both. You worked on different campaigns. There's nothing to do with what side of the aisle you're on. But when I'm a real estate guy, okay, I'm in the real estate business. I'm a real estate developer. I buy properties, fix them, flip them, and anyways, and I have apartment buildings and all that good stuff. And the way Donald Trump just got fined surplus of $400 million for doing something that is done on the regular. That's just the way of doing business in our business. I literally, before we got on this podcast, I told you my banker called me. Remember, I was like, I got to call my banker, and I'm closing on a loan that we're refinancing a 5-unit apartment building, and she needed my picture of my driver's license for the banking, whatever. The banks need all that information. before closing on Monday. So this is normal. Like, when I filled out that application, she asked me, what do you think the property's worth? What do you think your assets are worth? And I put a number based on the formula that the banks give us to use, right? This is normal course of doing business. And now we go and we weaponize the justice system to go after our opponents. And guys, the way I see this, Cody, is that if they could do it to him, and he's Donald Trump, he was a president of the United States. Dude, I'm a little guy compared to Donald Trump. I only own 150 properties, 50 units in Pennsylvania, not even New York City, right? What will they do to me if I say something that an opposing party doesn't like? Holy shit. So this is not an attack on Donald Trump. This is an attack on America. This is an attack on capitalism. This is an attack on freedom. This is an attack on the way America is, everything America stands for, if that makes sense.
Well, extrapolate that out a little bit, right? And, think of some of the other policies that have been pushed by, I will say more often by those on the left for, what essentially amounts to social capital, right? They're looking for a way to measure someone's social capital, which I think is an extremely dangerous precedent to set. So, for instance, take banking, for instance. Let's set aside the ESG stuff, which is highly controversial for a reason, right? They're looking for ways to deny the ability to finance project like yours. What's to say that in 10 years, ESG doesn't evolve to the point where, like, you and I are talking about Donald Trump right now, right wing, quote unquote right wing stuff, right? And you get denied a loan for new property because you're not sufficiently socially governance, so that affects your access to capital. But I'm a gun owner. I'm a big hunter. There's a gun case over there. There's
me too.
A wall, but I've got
I got guns all over my house here.
Yeah, so there are now bills actively in state legislatures and kicking around the federal government right now. There are bills that are pushing to force banks, and banks are complying with it proactively in many cases, to share your information from every time you make a purchase at a store that sells guns, right? So if you go to Sportsman's Warehouse, you buy some fishing tackle, because they sell guns, you're now put on a list with the ACF as a gun owner, right? And then that's extrapolated out across, banking and finance and stuff. But, you're not, and that can affect your access to capital and stuff over the long term. That's dangerous, there needs to be a protection of people's freedoms, and not just at the government level, especially at the government level, but on the private level too. Large businesses have become this sort of fourth estate of government, right? Like outside the electoral process, where, you're seeing social media, suppressing right of center voices. You're seeing, I just talked about banking and sharing that information with law enforcement, acting like all legal gun owners are criminals. The ESG stuff with regard to access to capital for and capital markets overall for anybody who's not sufficiently woke, if you will. It's a scary time, and that is a true next level evolution of cancel culture, right? Where it's not just individuals canceling you anymore, and now not the government canceling you, right? But now they can kill your career, they can kill your business, no matter how big it is, right? Because if they restrict your access to capital, that's it. It's over. You lose banking services, and whether it's a small business like any of my small businesses, I've got a small property business as well. I've got my podcasting business, but even a larger business like yours, it can smother it if you don't have any access to financial products.
It's just we're living in scary times with everything going on. Cody, you having been on the inside, right? What do you think would shift us and change the machine from where it's going, right? Look, let's be honest, right? Like I'm a center. I stand in the middle. I'm a center right guy. Some things. What happened in January 6th a couple years ago, I wasn't for that. I when that happened, I couldn't relate to that, and I understand people were upset and all that. I went and I registered as an independent right after that, right? Like the right does a lot of craziness too, right? The right we canceled the abortion, or we went to that. The abortions did the Roe versus Wade thing, right? There's some things that I also think that the right does that's out there, but the left is just way like they're doing a better job. Let's just call it. Let's call it what it is. They're doing a significantly better job at. They're winning. They're winning this game. They're winning the social capital game. They're winning. They're dirty. They're winning at this game. The question I have for you is when does this whole thing, this cancel culture, change? What needs to happen? What's the type of politician that needs to get into office? What's the type of policies that need to go in effect that will allow us to go back to allowing Americans to get back to the roots of where this company was built on, freedom of speech? They do. Just because I disagree with you, just because I said I don't like AOC, and I'm gonna say that publicly, I don't like AOC. Her policies are bad. She's not, in my opinion, she's not smart. She actually behaves like a child. Okay, she has zero intellect, and she shouldn't be in the position she's in. Right? She doesn't care about the people. She only cares about herself and her party and her ideologies. My opinion, and I have some politicians that are on the right, on the left, and we're friends, real good friends. This chick is out there. What needs to happen for this cancel culture to shift? What type of policies need to come in place? What type of leadership do we need to see in the future? And I'll tell you, it ain't Donald Trump, because this whole shit started while he was in there. He ain't the fixer of that, because he couldn't fix it then. They tried canceling him, and he was president.
Teflon Don.
Yeah.
So here's the ugly truth, okay? As I said earlier, I said that Donald Trump was a symptom, not the disease, right? That extrapolates out across all leaders. I'm sorry, but for all your listeners, a leader is not going to get us through the cancel culture stuff, the cultural issues that we're having in our country, right? The only thing that's going to fix that are your listeners. That's the God's honest truth. So the people, right, at writ large, there needs to be a majority of them that are sick of this, and then those winds will change on their own. So take, for instance, the cancel culture stuff. Right now, it's cool, trendy, etc., to cut off your family members, to stop talking to a friend, to violent protest is even cool these days. Like the way that kids are acting on these college campuses and stuff.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, and that people have to get tired of that in order for that to not, be the cultural phenomenon it is anymore. So much like we went through the same thing, very similar in the 60s, where, we were violently attacking, as a people, Vietnam veterans. We were, throwing paint at them. We were calling them baby killers. We were doing this, we were doing that. But to kids that were just coming back from a war there was still a draft during Vietnam. You know what I mean? Like, they were literally picked out of a hat and sent to war, right? And we were, people were throwing paint on them when they came home, calling them murderers, right? So we're going through the same kind of evolution now, I think, which necessitates that I believe that there will be a resurgence of stronger cultures from like the 80s and 90s and such later down the line. But right now we're in it for the long haul, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. And politicians, so culture doesn't reflect politicians. Politicians reflect the culture of the day, right? So as long as we empower them to act that way, right? As long as AOC, because what incentive does AOC have to have some class, behave like an adult in Congress and whatnot, if she's getting all of her political power from being somebody who claps back, catches an attitude, speaks while misinformed, producing like good policy, like a lot of, I won't say most, because there are a lot of great congressmen. I've worked with many of them. I can name them right now that, a lot of those guys are really there to make a difference. And they sometimes get very frustrated with this, right? But a lot of the more famous Congress people that you see nowadays, AOC is probably, one of them I don't know her personally, but will propose legislation that is wildly outside the box, knowing full well that it's going nowhere. It's not even going to get through committee, let alone getting through the floor. And they'll do it just so that they can send a fundraising email about it, right? So, and that happens on both sides of the aisle. So it is a reflection of the culture of the day, not the other way around. So when people, and it's the same thing when people complain about attack ads, right? Like, I get it all the time. Oh, God, I hate these attack ads. Like, if you really hated these attack ads, guess what? None of us in the industry would do them because the voters wouldn't respond to them, right? So when people stop responding to the stimuli, when the tactics stop working, then things will change because there will be an impetus for change. But until then, it's just going to get worse. Like, I don't think Donald Trump is I think he's still the tip of the iceberg with how vicious and visceral and outside of the box that politicians are going to get. And it's, again, there's unfettered access through digital media to all of these people. So there's not as much of an insulation, which you say both, I'll say this. There was a time when Congress people necessarily had to get to know one another, even on other sides of the aisle, right?
Yes, sir.
They used to play golf together. They talk in committee. They weren't constantly on C-SPAN and Fox News and blah, blah, blah. Like, they had to get to know one another. I have to get it through the leadership of my own party, right? But I also have to probably sway a couple people, at least in committee, if not, on the floor itself, to get the bill passed. And then if I have a president that's on the other side of the aisle from me, I got to get him to sign it, right? So there used to be more of that camaraderie between leaders, but now, right? So take what you could arguably say killed Chris Christie's career. He hugged Obama during a natural disaster in my home state of New Jersey, right? When Obama came, toured a site, and then promised some aid to the state after Hurricane Sandy. I remember. So, yeah. So that was long before Donald Trump. Okay. So again, Trump is the symptom. He's not the disease. People were pulling this stuff long before that even. So, when we stop rewarding AOC's behavior and start rewarding behavior like a governor that's hugging a president of the opposite aisle that he endorsed his opponent that very same year because he's doing the right thing for the people of the state, when we start rewarding that behavior and not the bad behavior, if you will, then things will change. But until then, like, it's going to take, us teaching our kids. I fear, like, I'm going to have to teach my 4 kids. I don't know if you have any kids, Martin, but like, it's going to take us teaching them that it's not all about, like what your political identity is. It's more about what your personal identity is, what your values are, and that's different from what your political identity is.
100%.
We need to teach them to
100%, brother.
Those distinctions.
100%. I think that's one of the I think both sides, because I have friends on both sides, right? I think both sides have values, and I think it's a values thing. And I was recently having a conversation with a state senator, and he tells me that he voted. Actually, I had him on the podcast here a few weeks ago, and he tells me that he voted on state legislature here in Pennsylvania for financial literacy to be a requirement in high school graduates. And I was commending him for that, because I think that we need that in our schools, and we need to teach Americans about money. We're doing nothing about that. We're just teaching them all the wrong things that don't work, 401ks, this, that, and it's failed. And all we have to do is look at our grandparents, look at our elders, and see how that's worked for them. That hasn't worked for them. And we're not teaching society about wealth and how to create it, and how to get assets. And I was commending him for that. That's just my values, right? That's a personal value of mine. I'm a business guy, so I want to teach my kids about investing and making money and flipping and things like that. So he tells me that, yeah, that was it. That's in his value, and it was unpopular with his party, and he took heat for it. And I'm like, whoa, this is what's best for the freaking people. But I respected the fact that he did it, despite the fact that it was in his value system to know that it felt right to him. Like, hey, this is what my constituents need, is the right thing to do in his own opinion, in my opinion too. And he did it anyway. So I think we need more people like that, instead of in power, instead of just voting based on party lines. I mean, it's disgusting to hear, to see what happened to Chris Christie because he hugged Obama. Because, listen, we're all human beings. It's like, hey, man, if I'm in the side, I'll share this story with you. I used to have a house here. My second home here in Pennsylvania is in a rural area. We're in the woods. My house that I had up the road here, same area, right? And one day I'm outside of my, I have my door open, and I see a guy on a motorcycle driving his motorcycle. He hits a turkey. A turkey crosses in front of him. One of those wild turkeys that we have here in Pennsylvania. You know what I'm talking about, in Jersey. He falls off his bike. It all happens in front of my road, right? The rural road. And he falls on his bike. He tumbles. His bike slides. Boom, boom, boom. I see this. It's all happening. Luckily, I never opened up. No one in Pennsylvania uses their front door. We all use our garage to go into our house. Most of us do, right? So I see this whole thing. I run out. My wife heard it. We both run out. I run out to the road, and I literally carry the guy up. I carry him, and I bring him to my driveway. I lay him on the floor. We call the cops. We call the ambulance. This is just a human being, right? This is just me serving another human being. Now, let's say the news captures that. I wasn't looking at political reasons. It didn't matter if the guy was the devil worshiper at that moment. You know what I'm saying? None of that mattered. Like I'm just helping another human being. It didn't matter the color of his skin. None of that mattered. It's just shit. I just saw another human being in trouble. It happened in front of my home. I have a responsibility to go do something and help this guy. And it's like that being captured, and now we're being in the opposite party, and the guy is thanking me because I called the cops and I helped him, and the guy is thanking me for doing that, and now he gets persecuted because he can't thank another man for helping him. That's not either the color of his skin or in the opposite party or whatever the freaking reason is. That's just ridiculous, man. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. And what you said though is really where people need to draw the line, right? This is where, for instance, I'm engaged now to be married, and she's a great woman, and I thank God every day for her. But before I was engaged, I used to go on dates every once in a while, right? And I remember distinctly one woman that I brought home. This was before I moved to Alaska, where it's a lot more normal here. But I've taxidermy and stuff. I'm an NRA Life member, so I have an NRA Life member at the time sticker on my truck, and it was in my my front windshield at the lower bottom there, right? And So, I mean, this is just a sticker that the NRA sent me because I'm a member of the organization, right? And I put it on my truck because I'm allowed to, right? She gets in the car, or she gets in the truck, and she says, "Oh my God, you're an NRA life member?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what the sticker says." They only said to the people that are life members. And so, she rolls her eyes, says nothing else of it. We get home. She comes in the house, right? Back to my house. This is the first time that I've, third or fourth date. First time I've brought her home. She walks in the house, sees, some taxidermy on the wall, right? Says, and I quote, "I don't feel safe here." What? I'm like, look, at the time was what, 2019, 2020? That is again, coded language, right? That's like, I was like, look, then you got to leave. If you don't feel safe here, you got to get that.
Yeah.
Get in an Uber and you got to go. And I need a picture of the Uber's license plate because if you don't feel safe here, you're not coming inside my house so that you can cancel me, right? Like, God knows what you're going to say online tomorrow about this, and you don't have to like my politics, right? Like, you don't even have to sleep with me if you don't like my politics. I'm not even saying that. What I am saying is, though, that you cannot take a sticker on someone's truck, right? And, a fairly innocuous sticker, because there's millions of NRA members nationwide. And the existence of some, again, fairly common taxidermy on someone's wall as a judgment on whether they're some a violent offender of some nature. I don't have a criminal record. It's like that floored me. And I was talking to some friends later on that evening at the bar. Went back to the bar to hang out with some buddies, and one of them, at the time was this was when a lot of the gun debate was still happening, which it still does, and I think that there's some valid issues on both sides there. There's certainly too much gun violence in the country, but I don't think a lot of these laws will fix those things. So, she goes, "Well, all NRA members are murderers," one of my friends.
Whoa.
At the same night, right? And I'm like, look, I'm an NRA life member. You are very good friends with me. We've been friends for years. I'm sure you've seen the sticker on my truck, right? And I'm not shy about being a gun owner, right? I go hunting all the time. I'm showing everybody all my hunting pictures all the time, to the point where people hate it a lot. It's all over my social media. So I asked her, I'm like, so that necessitates one of two things. Either you are very good friends with a murderer, right? Or I'm not a murderer, even though I'm an NRA member, which invalidates everything you just said about all NRA members being murderers. Or you're just an idiot. So, which of the three things is it, right? She's like, yeah, no, you're cool. I'm like, okay, but there's nothing special, inherently special about me as an NRA member that inoculates me from being a murderer, aside from the fact that I haven't killed anybody, right? So if you're holding all gun violence in the country against all NRA members, you either hold it against me too, or you don't hold it against them all. Because as you're realizing, as I'm sure you would say, if someone who didn't know me walked up to me and called me a murderer, that would be preposterous, right? Like, you shouldn't be making these value judgments just based on, some organization of people. And I donate to the NRA for a number of reasons. It's not just the gun rights stuff. It's the fact that they're the number one gun safety organization in the world. They, do all this training to make sure that people know how to handle firearms safely. They help fund mental health services access for people. They do a lot for hunters, which is like the number one reason I'm an NRA person. I even write for their magazine. So, that is, a microcosm of the problem. So many people are, making these hugely broad-based, sweeping judgments about people that they don't know. You know what I mean? And unless someone has pulled the trigger today and and it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt that they've killed someone, calling them a murderer is the type of hyperbole that people need to stop before this stuff will change.
100%, man. 100%, brother. Man, I'm so glad that I had you on here, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there something that you haven't shared yet? Because we're out of time. Is there something that you haven't shared yet, Cody, that you should have shared that would bring a tremendous amount of value to the listeners and myself?
Yeah. So, I just spent a lot of time talking about how politics doesn't affect the culture. It does the opposite. What I will say is this: as far as value goes, right? The economics, that sort of thing, is very much affected by the choices you make at the ballot box, right? So the culture stuff is a distraction. If you're voting to change the entire culture of the country, you cannot affect culture with voting and leadership. You can't do it. The culture starts at the bottom, and then those leaders, especially elected leaders, are a reflection of that culture. Whereas if you want a better life for your family, the best way to do it is to ensure that somebody is there that's going to do two things. Number one, ensure your fundamental freedoms, right? Number two, ensuring that the boring stuff is taken care of first, that there is solid economic policy in place that's going to ensure that there's good jobs, good industry at a steady rate through the country, right? And not concentrated with wealthy donors. So, inflation, like somebody that's going to combat inflation and without, all the bits and baubles and pretty things, say what you want about Donald Trump, but the results speak for themselves. Inflation was significantly lower during his tenure as president, as opposed to the insanely high inflation that we've had for the last 3.5-4 years.
Yeah.
So if you want a better life for your family, you want to create value, you want, the finance cost of a house today is twice as much as it was, 4 years ago, right? Or at least twice as much. I don't know what the interest rates are today. You're close on
7.1% today.
It's 2 to 3 times as much as it was in 2020. So we need to keep that, you need to vote with your wallet first. It is how I would, is the piece of advice I would give to people, because good economic policy is good for everybody.
Yeah, right or left, it doesn't matter, black or white, it doesn't matter. It's good for all of us, right? When we can put. I went to a supermarket earlier this week with my mom, and as I just got here to PA, and we went food shopping, and you know how moms are. I'm a grown man, but moms always want to feel like they're doing something for you, right there. So we go to the supermarket, and she's like, I want to buy the food that you're going to eat while you're here for the next week. I'm like, all right, Mom, let's go. So she goes to the supermarket, and I typically am not necessarily looking at the prices when I'm going to buy stuff at the supermarket. I just get what I need, right? Like, I just get what I need. And got this carton of eggs, and my mom's like, no, son, like that's $8. And I'm like, holy shit, this thing is really $8. Like, that's,
man, I got some chickens.
I had chickens here in the house. Yeah, I got. So she was like, "That's $8." I was like, "Man, $8 for a carton of eggs right now? That's crazy." She was like, "Grab this one. It's $4." And still $4 for a carton of eggs is, you know what I mean? That's still a lot of money, like for a carton of eggs. I'm gonna sound like an old guy here, but I remember when eggs were below $1, right, or $1.50 for a carton of eggs.
I remember that.
You know what I mean? And to pay $8 for eggs, like, it's really hurting America. And so I share that with the listeners to echo what you just stated, right? To echo the importance of selecting the right leaders, and use logic when selecting your leaders, when voting for people. Use your logic and see, don't use emotions, right? Get your emotions out of the way. Get all the fluff out of the way. You're the guy that writes the attack ad. So learn to see through that. Learn to see through that stuff. Learn to do your own due diligence. Go and look up the candidates and see how they voted and see how that aligns with your family, right? That's what I do. That's one of the things I do. I go in and look how this candidate's history of votes and systems and beliefs, and and what they stand for, and then I look at does this align with who I am as a human being? It's nothing to do with parties, has nothing to do with political affiliation. Do I support that thing that this person is voted for? Do I support? And I look at the history. No one's perfect, but it's got to be the one that's closest to me and what impacts me the most. That's just the way I see it, and I think that echoes kind of the way of what you were just mentioning there, Cody. So, my brother, thank you so much for coming on, Cody. If people wanted to connect with you, or they wanted to find you, or maybe they wanted to talk to you, you mentioned earlier about the podcast, and you're writing and doing some things. How do people find you? How do people connect with you? How do people just they want to have a conversation with you about maybe doing business with you some way, somehow, or connecting with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find my podcast production company at www.troutstreamstudios.com. We're on all major social platforms as well as Trout Stream Studios, so LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. You can find me personally on Instagram at McLaugh, MCLAUGH1985, McLaugh 1985. And then on Twitter at MCLAUGH19, McLaugh19. And then, you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I'm an open book, so I'm really unabashed about talking about those things. Somebody wants to talk about podcasting, I've given a lot of advice to a lot of great top charting podcasts on that front, so I can certainly help you guys with that. And then, if you guys want, especially if someone's listening wants to talk about hunting and fishing, I'm your guy. So, give me a call. Find me on social media. We're at troutstreamstudios.com.
Perfect, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate you. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Martin.